Alright, I'm back, and now we want to do a review of the spectroscopic parallax lab. And this was one that was done on the computer, so there was no physical measuring device that you had to master. You just needed to know how to type on your computer. So what would be some concepts from that lab that you learned? Well, one was, if I give you a picture of a black body, so the black body curve, and then could you find where the maximum wavelength is? So you did that in that lab. Okay, another thing I could ask you is to calculate the distance to a star if you know its absolute magnitude and its relative magnitude. And there was a formula for this, which is given to you in the next column. So it says that relative magnitude minus the absolute magnitude equals 5 times the logarithm of the distance minus 5. Now that's a heavy-duty formula, I admit it. So make sure and bring your calculator. If you can do it, you're going to get some bonus points. I'm not going to tell you how many, but if you could get that problem right and give me the right distance, I'll give you some bonus points for solving that problem. Otherwise, don't worry about it. Okay? Could you find the temperature of a star using Wien's law? So I would have to give you the maximum wavelength, and then you could plug it into that formula in that last column for Wien's law, and then solve it for T. Okay, and then the last thing is find the actual brightness, find the mass, find the radius, and find the color of a star if you know its temperature, and if I give you an HR diagram. So that you would find on the HR diagram the temperature at the bottom, you bounce it off the main sequence, and then you can find its brightness, its luminosity, and all of those other properties. So we did that in lab. Okay, now let's go down to the next lab, which was on Hubble's law. So this one was also done on the computer. There was no physical measuring device that you used. So it was all done on the computer. So could you tell me what is meant by a red shift and a blue shift? So what does it mean if a galaxy is red shifted? What's really happening? Or what does it mean if a galaxy is blue shifted? What does that mean? Okay, and then could you make a graph of the speed, and the speed would be going up and down on your graph, and versus distance to that star or to that galaxy, and so that would be going sideways. Could you make a graph and then use it to find Hubble's constant? So that's exactly what you did in lab. So when you made your graph of the distance versus speed, what did you do to it in order to find Hubble's constant? So again, go back to the lab and check that out. Okay, now there was a whole bunch of formulas. So you had the formula that you used to calculate the speed of a galaxy. And that, what you did was you took the change in the wavelength. So you looked at the spectrum of the galaxy, and then you looked at a particular line, and then you noticed that if the galaxy was moving, it was shifted. And then you measured the distance between the two lines in nanometers. And then you took that and you divided it by the original color of the line. So So that would be the wavelength sub zero. And then you took that answer and you multiplied it by 300,000. And then that was the speed of that galaxy. Okay, then what did you do with it? So if you know the speed of the galaxy, you can find the distance to the galaxy by dividing by 22, by dividing by Hubble's constant. So you actually did not do that part in the lab itself. But that's the whole purpose of the lab, is to get the Hubble constant, so then you can use it in that formula. Okay, then another math thing that you did was graphing. So if I gave you the distance and the speed of, let's say, 3 galaxies, could you plot them on a graph, and then could you find the slope of that graph? Okay, the slope of a graph is rise divided by run. And then the last thing you learned in that lab was to calculate the age of the universe. You took 300.3 and you divided it by Hubble's constant. Okay, so that's it. So those are all the different labs that we did this year, and hopefully that gives you an idea of the kinds of questions that I'm going to ask you about them. Now, you don't get to use a note card for this particular exam, but I am going to give you all of the formulas that you will need to do on the exam. So please study this material before you come into class, because this is worth 100 points. It's worth 5% of your grade, and you need every point that you can possibly get. Okay, so I'll see you on test day. Bye.